Nuclear talks with Iran hitting a snag over Tehran's refusal to stop working on a plutonium-producing reactor and enriching uranium at higher levels. This after revelations that the Obama administration eased sanctions on Iran leading up to the talks, which infuriated our closest ally in the Middle East. We're talking about Israel. Stephen Yates is former deputy assistant to the vice president for national security affairs and currently CEO of DC International Advisory. Good to see you, Stephen.
Hi, Arthel. Good to be with you.
Thank you. So Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu saying, listen, guys, this is a bad deal. It's a good deal for Tehran, but bad for all other parties involved. Does he have a point? Unfreeze some of Iran's assets while Iran agrees that for 6 months it will stop enriching uranium to weapons-grade levels. Is it another situation, Stephen, where Iran says this to appease the international community, but perhaps, as usual, doing what it wants to do?
Well, I think you have an interesting challenge because Prime Minister Netanyahu can't afford the luxury of diplomats working out an elegant deal. He has to face real hard consequences of, does Iran have these capabilities, and does he have to rely on his own forces to deal with it? Or is this deal going to be verifiable, complete, and irreversible and enhance Israel's security as well as ours? And the history of these kinds of deals, whether with Iran or North Korea, I think would give a heavy dose of caution and modest expectations of what can really be accomplished.
So then you're saying perhaps a reason to be optimistic will never be on the table. Is there ever going to be time in this process, Stephen, that the U.S. and world leaders can trust Iran enough to take their word regarding whatever diplomatic deal that ends up being agreed to?
I think any power who has pursued nuclear weapons and deceived the international community once or more than once, we don't really have the luxury of trusting them. We have to have agreements. One day we might, in fact, reach them. It's possible that the new leader of Iran might lead his country in a new direction and engage in a serious process that completely, irreversibly, and verifiably dismantles their program. But we aren't there yet. I think it makes sense to have easing of sanctions in the process of executing a deal. I think it was odd, though, that the administration chose to do that prior to even having the deal, just to set the atmospherics for the diplomacy.
So you said that considering Iran has a new government, what might a deal look like?
Well, it sounds to me like the administration is pushing the contours of a deal that would limit the degree of uranium enrichment that Iran could continue to do. It sounds as though the arrangement might leave a number of centrifuges in their possession to continue to operate. And it doesn't quite capture an alternative path to a nuclear weapon through plutonium. So it's possible that they will put all of these elements together over time, but at the moment they seem to be reaching for a limited bargain meant to buy time for ongoing negotiations. But as I say, for Israel and others in the region, once Iran arrives at this capability, they don't have time anymore for the long-term negotiations.
And here's the question, Stephen. How does the U.S., well, along with the six world powers that they're in Geneva, track Iran's covert and mobile operations? I mean, is there any way to really know what they're up to, short of them, unfortunately, one day, God forbid, launching a long-range missile?
That's the great challenge in having any arms control agreement with regard to nuclear weapons or WMD period. The only kinds of really successful historical examples of complete verification are when a country willingly gives up the total package and actually has robust cooperation with the international community. They make a strategic choice to go a different way. There are no historical examples of those who have deceived the international community multiple times giving full disclosure. At best, we get to verify what they disclose. What they don't disclose, we rely on intelligence, which we know is not perfect information.
Quickly, Stephen, if I can get you to answer this quickly for me, what does Israel do right now?
I think Israel is extremely concerned, and they have to come up with any number of contingencies, assuming diplomacy fails.
Stephen Yates, I have to go. I'd love to keep talking, but I'm out of time. Thanks so much for your time this afternoon.
Thank you, Arthel. Anytime.